Okay, I think we have gone live. Right, hello everybody. There's Zoe and myself here today, and we're just going to natter together unless some people start asking us some questions. We'll wait till people arrive first of all.
Yeah.
How are you, Zoe?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm so ready for this lockdown to be over.
Oh gosh, yes.
Most people are feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
other than that, looking forward to the Easter weekend. So
Yeah, some people are actually enjoying not having to go out. You know, people who do like to actually be indoors and find it more of a pressure to have to be rushing to work and
yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of
facing
it.
traffic and things.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an increase, isn't there, as lockdown unfolds. There's going to be an increase of stress on us to go back to the things that we used to do, and maybe we don't want to do them anymore, or that wasn't what we enjoyed or liked. So I think that's going to increase over the months.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say hello to everybody who's watching so far. By all means, come in and post a comment or just say hello, and then we know who's there, because we don't know unless we see your name. And I can see that a few people are joining us now. So hello, everybody. And if you've got any questions about anything, primarily sort of stress-related, this sort of work, this approach, any concern. Yes, what are you struggling with? And
what are you struggling with?
And hello, Beverly. Nice to see you here. So yeah, okay. So go on then. Tell me what you've been doing then, Zoe, to help you during these challenging last few weeks. I think it's been more challenging since Christmas, personally, as it's gone on and on and on. What have you done to help yourself?
Yeah, I think the winter's been the hardest. Harder than last year anyway. But I've been doing some morning yoga. I've changed my morning routine. I've been doing morning yoga every day, and some exercises and things like that. So that's been really good. I really love kind of offloading, journaling, kind of just sitting for a little while before I go to sleep and kind of just offloading about frustrations and stresses and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm doing that more. I don't tend to do that every day, but I do it, whenever I feel like, just something's wrong with me. Just kind of, sit before I go to sleep and offload that. So
quite.
I'm not keeping it. So
great.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, we have a couple of more comments. Hello to Louise. She's saying hello, and Lynn. So Lynn, question for you first, Zoe. Lynn is interested to know how hypnotherapy can help with TMS. Good question, Lynn.
Good question. So I qualified in hypnotherapy in probably about 2010, something like that. So yeah, but we've done it for quite a lot of years. And the way I love integrating it with this work and TMS work is when people are sort of getting in their own way. So when there's sort of an element of them that is dismissing whatever it is that they want to change or they want to work on, and they're kind of already dismissing it before they've really made a decision. So when people are getting in their own way, then I think hypnotherapy really helps, because you can use it. We do it in meditation. It's the same trance work. It's the same kind of state, but it gives you a toolkit in that state to do something productive with that person. So if they are particularly getting stuck for some reason, then I generally use that state first, so a hypnotherapy state first. And then the tools would be things like, parts work or inner child work or things like that. So parts work, for those who are watching that sort of don't know what parts work is, where there's sort of a side of you that wants to continue something and a side of you that doesn't want to continue something. And I think being in that hypnotic state while you have the discussion to say, what bits of me want to continue this, what bits of me don't want to continue this, is easier than doing it from somebody who's just consciously in front of you chatting to them, because sometimes they're they struggle to think of the answer, or they kind of get in their own way. So I think it kind of blends beautifully with the sorts of tools and techniques that we use in the world of TMS, but it's just approaching it from a different angle or a different state.
Yeah.
So
great. So it's just, again, another way of sort of integrating things, isn't it? And bringing it into help.
Yeah, and I did quite a bit of kind of metaphor work or story work using hypnotherapy, because I think when you're in that state, you're a little bit more creative, a little bit more, people can access a little bit more of the kind of creativity side or the unusual kind of metaphor side of things. So, if somebody is that way inclined and that client really enjoys that kind of approach to things, then hypnotherapy can be a beautiful tool to take them on a journey in their own head to somewhere or to find solutions and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't use it with every client. I certainly don't. For me, it's just another tool in the kit, and I use it when it's relevant.
Great. Thanks, Zoe. Okay, we have another question from Bertie, who says that more than 10 years ago, I cured chronic low back pain with Dr. Sana's method. I now realise I have had chronic fatigue syndrome since about a year or two after that, but I'm struggling to cure it. At what point should I give up on it as a TMS symptom rather than a real illness? Interesting. And have you got success stories from chronic fatigue syndrome? Okay, so I think that's quite interesting. At what point should you give up on it as a TMS symptom rather than a real illness? A TMS symptom is a real illness. It's the symptoms. The brain creates the symptoms, and if brains can create symptoms, then actually emotions can trigger those same symptoms via the brain. So these are basically neural pathways that have become learned. So very, very real, but I know what you mean. Yes, we've had some great success stories from chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and the chances are we could put you in touch with somebody if necessary who might be able to talk to you about their recovery. The other thing is, we're not, from what you've said, it's not clear what you've actually done. So for many people, it can be, you don't, and again, you don't say, maybe you'd like to comment on how you cured your chronic low back pain. We don't tend to use the term cure because it really is like a, it's the human state, isn't it? How the mind and body work together, and these neural pathways can be triggered. And the difference is that if pain is triggered and you have no fear and you recognize immediately it is related to what's going on in your life and you deal with that, the chances are it won't become chronic. But it doesn't mean that you'll never have those neural pathways triggered. But if there's a lot of fear and trying and desperation involved, it can cause it to persist. And often people who have book cures, I don't think they learn as much. What do you think, Zoe? Because I think, the book cure is often about an epiphany. It's an aha moment. And then it is that, right, if the pain goes, then, and you haven't actually done anything, then actually what it is, you've not learned anything about why it's been triggered. So Bertie says it read healing back pain, it was mostly cured after that. Okay, and when the pain came back, just use the mantras and soon after it had gone. So again, that can be really helpful, but if that's the way you're trying to resolve your chronic fatigue syndrome, I would suggest that's probably not enough, and that much more could help you. And many people do need that one-to-one support and guidance, or that understanding about the nuances, the changes of not just saying to the pain, go away, that's it, I don't need you, go away, but actually having a lot more self-compassion and attitude and mindset are important, and recognizing how we create a lot of self-induced stress ourselves. And I'm going to stop now for a moment, Zoe, and just let you carry on, because I'm sure you've got a lot more to say as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It was in, for those that don't, I guess most people don't know, but in 2009, I suffered with kind of chronic stress and got diagnosed with IBS. And what I came to realise was, I think at the first point, there was a real fear to those symptoms and to the situation. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong. And the reason that I bring this up, because I think there's a danger with the word kind of illness and cure, because it makes you feel like there's something going on that's wrong.
Yeah.
And it absolutely. My perception completely changed when I learned about stress response, autonomic nervous system. It's your body reacting in a completely normal way. There's nothing wrong with you. And then that kind of changed the perception that I had and the fear that I had. There isn't ever going to be a point where my body does not communicate with me, because I interact with the world around me. It's just, for me, it's that change in mindset and that change in the way that you use the words to say, I'm not ill or broken. And there's nothing to cure. It's a natural relationship between, mind, body, and the world that you experience. And it's more of kind of a self-awareness where you go, oh, this is going on for me. And then you can do something about it, change it, or just accept that it's happening and it's fine. Like, there's something that you can do. So a big step for me was moving away from the language of illness and cure, and moving into, normal human being that has emotions and interacts with what's going on.
And some of it is about dealing with some of the past, or unresolved emotions, and those could be past repressed emotions. And so if there's been no understanding about how that's impacted who we are, then that's an important step. That's this understanding we are who we are because of our experiences in life. And that then in the day-to-day impacts us, so that we can have a trigger that could trigger us with something we're doing now, but it's linked to something from the past. Maybe it was primed in our childhood. And by learning that and understanding it and becoming much more emotionally aware, so that you become more aware of when you're starting to breathe faster, which could be an indication that something's happened to trigger you. Maybe when there's a pain, maybe when there's, that a button's been pressed. The more we begin to recognize that, the more we can then deal with that, rather than then going into our head sort of worrying about it, for example, or keeping busy and avoiding and being so busy that we're not stopping and actually acknowledging how we feel, which if we're not doing that, it's fueling the symptoms. So there's a lot more I think that we can do.
Absolutely. And I think it's okay to be human. It's okay to have human emotions and
the variety of humans.
And a variety. One of the things that I've been working with clients recently is there's no bad emotion. There's not good emotion and bad emotion. There's just emotion, and we as human beings experience a range of emotions. And just because we feel upset about something doesn't mean that we have to then punish ourselves for feeling upset about it. If you've been through something that's quite a big thing, a big change or a big move, it's going to take you a while to get used to that. And a mixture of emotions are going to happen. But I think that there's almost this element of, perfectionism, that we're not allowed that human experience, that, we're not allowed to feel the emotions that naturally become, that we experience through a situation. But I think the minute that you say, I'm allowing myself to be a human, and you have that self-awareness of what you've gone through or what has happened, then you sort of allow yourself to feel upset or angry or disappointed or whatever it is. And suddenly there isn't that resistance. And I think that's a lot where the kind of the self-induced pressure and strain and resistance comes from, I shouldn't feel angry, or I shouldn't feel sad, or I shouldn't feel disappointed.
Yes.
Where you can change that to, I've just been through this massive change or this massive thing. Of course I'm going to feel disappointed. That's okay. Yeah,
absolutely. And it is so important to be able to just acknowledge whatever emotion is there. And if it's an uncomfortable emotion, then it's really important to deal with it. If it's actually an emotion that we enjoy, then revel in it and allow yourself to feel that as well. In fact, I remember yesterday I was saying to a client that I went for a walk with my cats in the woods. And I remember coming back and I just noticed this feeling of peace in me. And it was a beautiful day. Obviously, it was lovely to just be walking and just coming back towards the house. And I just paused for a moment and allowed myself to feel how I was feeling, because I don't feel like that all the time. Yeah. So the idea of being able to have glimmers of these lovely emotions, it's worth actually allowing ourselves to feel that as well.
Yeah, how often do we just kind of bypass that? We just go through our day.
Too busy.
Oh, hang on a minute, I feel joyous or gleeful or happy or the one that I love is awe. I'm a very visual person. So going out somewhere and just standing in awe of something is a fantastic. I
love that.
And how often are we just walking along somewhere? We don't kind of give yourself that chance to stay in the emotions of joy, peace, or whatever it is.
And that's part of what we do when I'm working with clients, is to actually look at a feelings wheel and start exploring some of the feelings that we don't actually usually acknowledge. Because I think a study showed that if you ask the average person on the street, most of them don't even know 6 emotions, can't name 6 emotions that they feel. So actually this can help. So for example, if somebody's had a very abusive dad, then they may well have grown up learning that anger is bad and they can't show anger because look what happens if they're very volatile. They've seen their dad being volatile. So their primal brain begins to learn that anger is a really dangerous emotion. Look what can happen. So they learn to repress that. And then if they are triggered and start feeling angry, then actually the primal brain is going to protect them from that. And they might I've known many people where they're only aware that they feel a bit frustrated or something annoyed, but they're not aware that that's anger. So actually being able to start exploring some of these emotions can be really helpful. Anyway, let's just go back. Sorry, do you want to say something before we go back?
I think there's just 2 parts of that. There's one, knowing what the emotion is, and then there's another one of learning to be comfortable in it or with it.
Yes. Oh, yes.
There's this element of what is it that I feel because I don't know what that is. Oh, it's a feeling of I'm scared.
Yeah.
And then to not detract yourself from the feeling of scared and not judge yourself for it, but to sit with it with compassion and kindness. And those are 2 skills, I think, that are such powerful tools and such powerful skills.
And often lacking in people with chronic pain, unfortunately, and that's been shown. This sort of alexithymia, which is this being unable to really feel emotions, acknowledge emotions. So I think that's important. So Lubna says, related to Bertie's question, in your experience, what is the longest time you've seen it take for someone to recover from initial TMS symptoms? How long can it take to take the body out of fight or flight? Well, for many people, it's decades that they've been going through this until they realise that it is actually something that they can work with. And who can put a time on it? You can't put a time on it because everybody's different. And this is why I feel this is a personal development journey. This is more about how we work on us. We're not trying to cure ourselves. We're not trying to heal ourselves because what is there to heal? We're not trying to, and in fact, the more we try to get better and try hard to be better by a certain time, the more resistance we're creating to allowing our body to start getting better. This is about working on us and soothing our primal brain and beginning to feel safe. And then gradually, we don't need those symptoms. So, so I think how long does it take the body to take the body out of fight or flight it's an individual thing, because what's happened in somebody's past, did they grow up with huge amounts of trauma and in fight or flight constantly, where they were walking on eggshells, they didn't know when somebody was going to do something or hit them or whatever, or just feeling very unsafe throughout their childhood, the chances are that they're going to take a lot longer. Doesn't mean that they can't resolve these, but you can't put a time on this. Everybody's an individual.
Yeah, and I think actually, like physically, from a physical point of view, if your body has had that fight or flight reaction and is in that sympathetic dominance, it doesn't take long to then calm that system down. It's a thing that your body naturally does and can do very well. I think the challenge is, number one, is we get in our own way. We don't let that system just do what it needs to do. We kind of put in this whole load of extreme thinking and thought on top of that, and that's what keeps us there.
And it becomes a habitual pattern.
The beast, we kind of keep it going. And then I think the other thing is around, like you said, it's just that if you are constantly triggering that system all the time for all sorts of different reasons, then you just end up staying there. So I think physically our bodies are very capable of changing from that fight or flight very quickly. But I think it's a lesson to learn to let your body do that and not kind of keep triggering it, keep feeding it, keep getting in your own way, and keep that system doing that. And I think that's a bigger lesson.
Trusting yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I love the way we have some of our SIRPA trained practitioners that comment as well.
Yes.
So thank you for being there. And Shaheen says, I love that Zoe says it's okay to be human. The importance of giving validation to all emotions. No such thing as good or bad emotions. They're all important. It's so true. And I think that's the problem, is that people feel that they shouldn't be feeling angry, you know, or they feel guilty for journaling about the anger they felt to their abusive dad because they love him and they can understand why he behaved as he did now. But the fact was that as that young child, they did feel that anger. And therefore, it's about allowing yourself to express it. Because actually, by releasing these, by allowing ourselves to express these unresolved emotions, it often improves relations. And because if you're less reactive, the other person becomes less reactive, you become more understanding. So often it's about acknowledging the anger and then deal with the guilt, if there's any guilt there, and then learning to really rationalize it and learn from that.
Mine, to be fair, was actually towards myself. I think that I had a very kind of, it was my own expectations. I wanted to achieve more, do more, felt that I should love that word, should be doing more, should be achieving more, should be doing this and should be doing that. So for me, it was that relationship with myself. It was actually saying, whoa, hang on a minute, why are you behaving this way towards yourself? And it was a real lesson in almost self-awareness, self-acceptance, judgment, guilt, you know, all those kind of feelings. But it was all towards me as a person. I just felt that I should be doing more, should be able to do more.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, you know, the disappointment was my own. And I think it was quite a challenge to kind of have that personal reflection without the judgment and say, you're allowed to be a certain way or do a certain thing, and that's okay. So for me, it was certainly more of a kind of personal journey than it was a sort of outward towards somebody else, although that was an element of it.
And learning to be self-compassionate, because that is so lacking in so many people. Yeah.
There was one thing I did, and I did it for 24 hours. I wrote down every single thing that I said internally to myself for 24 hours. And by the end of the day, there was over 300 entries. And I was thinking, number one, how busy is your brain to have 300 and odd things? You know, how much space and time and mental energy does that take up? But the other thing was how disgusting it was. Like, I was my own worst bully. I was worse than any bully. And I was sat there going, you're saying that to yourself 300 times a day. And then you're expecting yourself to feel healthy or feel good or, you know, be motivated. And how can you do that when you're hearing that constantly all day?
I often suggest that people think about, you know, would you talk to your child the way that you talk to yourself? And that's definitely, they wouldn't do that. But only, how can you change it unless you become aware of what you're actually doing? As Louise says, turning from critical parent to nurturing parent. And Beverly says, absolutely, that word should is so powerful in a negative way. That shoulda, oughta, dreadful. So let's just go back to Bertie, who says, very interesting, thank you. Another reason why I feel the TMS approach might not work is that I work in mental health and I'm exploring my emotions daily and have explored a lot of past traumas. Have you helped people who are already well versed in dealing with uncomfortable emotions? And I think that's interesting. And I personally, yes is the answer to that. And I've worked with a lot of people who are psychotherapists, and quite often they can be more challenging, only in that they are very over-analysing, sort of analysing, and they understand the past trauma, their childhood, and they're always trying to explain and understand, and that's not always the case, that you don't need to do that. So I think the answer to that is definitely. The other thing is the difference between talk therapy, for example, and somatic work, where you're actually working more with the body and how the body is manifesting emotions, and that is very different. And that work certainly has been growing more and more over the last 10 years, really, as people have recognised that, especially if somebody's suffering from PTSD, for example, that traditional talk therapy, where they encourage you to go over and over a trauma from the past, might well actually re-traumatise you each time you do it. But working on the somatics and really working on this, allowing the emotions to be processed through the body, might be a way forward, but it certainly can be very helpful. And yes, the answer to your question is yes.
My question would certainly be, and how much time are you spending in that space? Because if the majority of your day is sat in this very mental, analytical, if your percentage of time that you're spending in all of that emotion and all of that is a long period of time, that has an impact.
Yeah,
that has an impact, and to have a self-awareness over what impact that has on you, perhaps that would be an interesting question.
And Kate says that many of her massage clients who suffer bereavement don't feel that they should be sad, going back to the shoulda, oughta, or affected by it. And she's always surprised by it. But yes, it's so common that people say that. And as Shane said, it was through the SIRPA approach that I learned to deal with the loss of my father last year, healthily and without the need to suppress my grief. It prevented me from developing mind-body symptoms as I used to do in the past. Ditto, Shaheen, and as you know, my father died the year before last, and I was using this work. I was using shaking as well. It helped me release physically the emotions that were building up, and it absolutely helped me deal with it so much better than if this had happened, years ago when I wasn't aware.
I think it's a toolkit. It's an absolute toolkit, and it's a toolkit that you then take with you for life, and you dip in and out of every single day of your life, because things happen, life happens. It's about just having a self-awareness to be able to manage yourself well, manage your way.
And to read the signals, to read the whispers before they start yelling at you. And most of the time we don't, especially when we're not aware of the emotional side of things, we aren't even aware of when our body's whispering, which might be, I don't know, a little bit of tension in the head, or it might be a tightness in the hamstring before it ends up being sciatica because we've ignored it. Yeah. So as you've just said again, this is about a personal development journey. You and I know we use this awareness all the time. It doesn't mean we journal every single day, we do this, we do that. No, we're just living our lives, but we're much more aware emotionally of what's going on, and therefore we will deal with it when we're triggered.
Yeah.
Plus, our self-care is significantly better than it used to be. So hopefully we don't get to that point.
Yeah, and for me, it's about saying, okay, I've got something coming up in my life that's a really stressful thing. So I'm going to plan more time in my calendar for self-care to support myself as I'm going through that particularly stressful thing. And for me, that's the thing, is about saying I dip into that toolkit to manage myself really well. And that means that I can face things, do things, and do them and feel good about them. So it doesn't mean that you are then restricted in terms of what you could achieve or what you could do, because you take the toolkit with you into everything that you do.
And I think it's not just about a toolkit, it's about the understanding and awareness and having the tools, which I know you're meaning. And being able to, I was working with a client this week and talking about boundaries and learning to say no. And that learning to say no, it doesn't mean you just say, no, I'm not going to do it. And people think they're going to be rude. So often what I'll say is turn it round. And usually they've had an example of why they can't say no. And I had that with a client this week. Well, how would you feel if they said no to you because they didn't have time to do it? Would you be offended? No. And it's about having that, if we don't look after ourselves and we don't put boundaries in ourselves, then that means we are going to be spending so much time looking after everybody else and doing things for everybody else. And then that results in us not being able to cope. And then the body will tell us. So by learning to put those boundaries up and learning to gently say no, or even just saying, well, I'm not sure if I can at the moment, I'll get back to you. And then thinking of a reason why not. But I am so much better at that than I used to be 15, 20 years ago. And it's important. It's important to put ourselves first.
Yeah.
Okay, so Christine says, I think we're to Christine. Oh no, Beverly. Learning to be vulnerable takes courage and also understanding that our body is trying to keep us safe from learned responses. I grew up thinking that my childhood was normal, and learning to understand my body's response took years. However, it makes a difference when we can start to acknowledge and relearn about ourselves. Yes, thank you, Beverly. Absolutely. Well said. Okay. Okay, so Christine says, I have chronic low back and neck pain, constant. So when I feel emotions, those seen as negative. I like the way you put that. You're listening, Christine. The pain worsens. I'm getting better at not panicking when this happens, e.g. when I have to stand in a queue. What advice does the SIRPA method give to deal with that? Okay, well done though. So you're definitely recognising that the fear fuels the pain, and we know that from the functional MRI scans, basically, that fear, ruminating, worrying actually causes pain to get worse. So I tend to talk about, especially in that, if you're standing in a queue, talking about pause, breathe, feel, reassure, to actually in that moment you've noticed. So that's the pausing, you pause, you've noticed. And that you slow your breathing right down, slow deep breaths as you begin to just calm. It's like the primal brain's going, oh, no, we're not safe here, something's going to happen. And you're reassuring your primal brain by not going into that, but slowing your breathing down, which is actually reassuring your primal brain that you are safe. It's the relaxation response, you're safe. And then to actually focus on how you're feeling, to just notice, not be trying to work out how you're feeling, why you're feeling as you're feeling. All you're doing is just resting your attention, noticing how you're feeling, and the sensations in your body. And if you go on the SIRPA website and go to the blogs, there's one about emotions and chronic pain there. And there's a 10-minute audio at the bottom of that page on a video, actually, a YouTube video. That you can listen to, and if you practice that daily, you begin to become more aware. Then and build up that emotional awareness, that felt sense. And then the reassurance is actually verbalizing, even if it's in your head, just saying, I'm safe, everything's fine, everything's all right. And I remember, again, somebody this week saying that they were standing, and after an hour, the pain got really bad, and then stayed for another hour, and he was standing in a discussion. And he was saying, well, it's because I've been standing for an hour. And I remember saying, yes, but what were you doing in that hour? And it turned out it wasn't the standing. It was when you could start understanding what's going on. And actually, he was getting more irritated during that time because of what was happening. Do we really want to stand there that long? Or is this just a signal initially, if after an hour, that is your body saying, okay, not feeling safe. It's a get out clause. Not that you have to say, I've got back pain, I've got to go, but actually just saying, oh, do you know what, I'm getting a bit cold here, I need to go, or whatever. Actually allows you to listen to yourself and act upon it.
I always think if you were doing something that you wanted to queue for, how long would you queue? And it's like, oh, well, you'd be comfortable to queue for the next 3 hours because you're really excited about whatever it is that you're queuing for. Well, obviously then the hour standing is not the relevant factor. It's the relationship with whatever you're queuing for that's the factor. I think as well, some clients that I've seen have fallen into the trap of waiting until a situation to try out a technique. And for me, that is a challenge because your brain is going into this really kind of fast, active, do something right now. And it's really hard when you're in that moment to remember what to do and how to do it. And then you I don't know what I'm doing. Well, for me, if you practice it outside of any triggering situation, so you practice the techniques, you get used to them, you get to know what it feels like, you get familiar with them. And then when you're in that situation, it's not so hard for your body to remember what it's doing and how it's doing it. So the tip for me is don't wait for the situation to learn how to connect with whatever tool you're using. Do it as a practice and learn outside when you're not in that situation.
And this is why, for example, with emotional awareness, I suggest people just do it even just 10 minutes a day as a form of meditation, as well as, for example, like I did in the field coming home on my walk, to actually just pause for a moment and allow myself to feel the happiness piece that I was feeling in that moment, because I'm then also building up my felt sense, my ability to feel emotions. If you're watching a film and it's a scary film, actually allow yourself to notice what's happening in your body when, not just, okay, I'm scared. How do you know you're scared? How's your body telling you you're scared? So this is not in your head thinking I'm scared, but actually noticing, maybe your hands are tensing up. Maybe there's some tension in your chest or whatever. And the breathing, practicing that slow, calm breathing, any time through the day, and whenever you notice yourself, breathing through your mouth and breathing up here, to actually just close your mouth and just calm your breathing down again, because each time you're doing that, you're training yourself to do that when you're going into fight or flight, for example, and at any time of the day, because it's become a norm for you.
Yeah.
So it might be often in the day, but at least you're training yourself to just change that pathway from the normal route. And is it somebody says, Nicola says it's tough to change habits of a lifetime. Absolutely. And it's about practice. It's habitual, and it's about practice and changing those neural pathways, and changing even, not just stopping a habit, but actually replacing it with something.
Yeah.
So rather than just saying, stop doing this, do this instead.
I'd like to comment on that, because actually changing a habit is quite quick in its actual fundamental changing a habit. Mm-hmm. What is not quick is the reasons behind what you're doing and why you're doing it. So one of the other things that I trained in was NLP, and that's all around, models of behavior and patterns of behavior and habits and patterns. And actually, the minute that you know something isn't true, is your brain's quite happy to accept that as true. So if you think about when you were a child and you believed in certain things, happening, I don't know who's watching, so but how quick did you let go of that belief? Well, the minute that you found that you knew that something isn't true is the minute that you start believing it's not true. So the actual fundamental brain process of changing a belief or a habit is not a long thing to do. It can happen quite quick. And I think that's what we see in kind of, people who read a book and then their symptoms change. It is quite quick for you. But it's the belief bit. That's the journey that it takes is getting you on board to believe something in order to change a habit. And the minute that you know that that's not what you're going to do anymore,
that's true.
The actual change comes around very quickly. So you can change habits and beliefs very, very quickly. But it depends on whether your brain still believes that habit to be worth keeping or worth, or believes. It depends what it believes.
And that's where doubts come in, because where there are doubts about whether you believe that your symptom is TMS or whatever, creates fear, creates resistance, and absolutely does affect how people...
Yeah. And then stands in the way of how quick that habit's going to change. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Kate says, so you find a resistance from different generations. So, for instance, the war generation who kept calm and carried on. Later on you said do. Do you understand that? Sorry, because I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Kate.
I think it was do you find resistance from different generations?
So for instance, the war generation who kept calm and carried on.
Or our youth of today. I think that's how I would read it. So I think, again, it's a really interesting conversation about beliefs, isn't it? It depends on what they believed. Because I think that there's some people out at the war that would have believed certain things, and there's other people that would have believed other things, depending on their experiences, depending on, what, depends on their, who were they around, what did they hear, what did they take on board. So I do think that there's a individuality to it. Do I see in general, because there was a culture, I guess, a British kind of stiff upper lipness or a stay calm and carry onness. I think culture plays a big part. So
culture and age.
We do find that there's a common impact because of a certain culture or a certain environment that people have been in. But then there's to it.
My findings have been that it's the younger generation find it easier to take this on board, take this whole understanding and concept on board, than my generation and above, for example. That's certainly been my experience.
It would be interesting to kind of, you'd have to research it, and I think as well with this work, there's so many moving factors. You know, is it because they grew up in a certain family? Is it because they had certain, you know, religious beliefs? Is it because of the environment? And my answer is it's because of all of it. Like, we are a tapestry as a human being.
Absolutely.
And, you know, nothing is an individual thing. I think it'd be interesting to see kind of from the last 12 months, you know, do we have any particular beliefs or particular ways of being that is because we've lived through the last 12 months? I guess it'll be interesting to wait and see, I guess.
Absolutely. I'm sure it will have impact. Well, we know it's impacted people, but probably as children as well, growing up, especially if they haven't been able to see family and friends.
Yeah, I like to look at people as individuals and to say that the way that they are is not wrong or stupid. We're not, as human beings, we're very clever. We make decisions and choices because of reasons, and those reasons are usually the right thing at the time, the right reason to be making that decision. And I think that takes away all of that. If I do come across somebody who is resistant, there's a reason why that's part of who they are, or that's happened. And I think it's really interesting to look at it from that point of view. In order to help them to say, where's that come from? And go back to what we were saying earlier on about not negating people's experiences or the way that people feel as somehow being wrong or incorrect, or, you know.
And I think because we are all so different, and nobody has walked in my shoes throughout my life, so how would they actually be able to experience and perceive things as I do? So everybody is going to be different. And the trouble is, when we judge people for how they are, if they're not believing the same as we do or anything, that also creates stress for ourselves. And yet we often do that without realizing it, because it's a deep ingrained belief that we learned.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of herd mentality. To be a human is, you know, we are a herd mammal. We want to stay in the pack, because when we stand out for the pack, we see that as a dangerous place to be. So when you are in an environment where a lot of people have the same beliefs or the same opinions, then your brain automatically will be wired to stay within that group, because
leaving that, you feel safe.
Yeah, you feel safe, you feel protected, and you feel welcomed, and you feel included.
Understood,
and the minute that you say, actually, I'm going to think something different or do something different, is the minute that your primal brain goes, what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And that's where the stress response system comes in, and that's why your brain is kind of yelling, sit down, shut up, and get back in with the crowd. So, you know, I can completely see how what I love about the SIRPA stuff is how do we teach people to manage that well, manage themselves through that well. So you can stand out, you can say something different, you can believe something different to your parents, to your friends, to your work colleagues, and that not have a trigger on your stress system. You know?
And it's about becoming easier, about getting out of your comfort zone and beginning to stretch that, and learning how to deal with the sensations you have when you begin to do that. And the more you learn to do that, then the further you can stretch yourself.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, certainly I'm guilty of this, is I've stretched myself too far out of my comfort zone by doing too many new things all at the same time. And then I suddenly realise, oh, hang on, I'm feeling quite agitated, quite nervous, what's going on? But the SIRPA work has taught me, to be able to recognise that that's what I've done, and recognise those feelings and not be scared of them, not run away from them, not want to change them, but just to say, oh, okay, you know, and what is it now that I want to do? Do you want to slow down with some of those new things? Do you want to just, you know, go on a bit of what do you want to do in order to settle the system back down again? But all of that comes from the knowledge of this approach and the tools that are on offer.
And recognising how we cause ourselves so much stress by trying to, by feeling out of control, because we're trying to control things that aren't in our control, you know, like COVID. You know, there are some things that we can control, and that's great, you know, generally what we can eat, what we're going to put on, wear, our own work, that sort of thing. But there are other things that, if they're completely out of our control, why are we wasting time actually worrying about those? But we could actually look at what can we consider that could help influence what's going on at the moment. And that might be changing our environment or how we're living or whatever. But it's so much of people's time is often spent on focusing their worries and fears around things that they have no control over.
Yeah, massively. And whenever I've done that with a client, I think the percentage every single time with people who have chronic pain or suffer with stress and anxiety, the percentage is always about 70 to 80%. So 70 to 80% of their time, their mental energy on any daily basis is being spent on stuff that they have no control over. And that feels very disempowering.
Exhausting. Yes.
And it's exhausting because nothing changes. Nothing's any different.
Yeah. And if we're feeling disempowered, then we're creating stress for ourselves, because in order to attitude and mindset is so important with this. And therefore we need to feel empowered.
Yeah, and you can't, like, you could think about that thought for 10 minutes or 3 hours and it's nothing's changed. So I've always said you can't swap the percentages where you spend none of your time in those kind of, you know, ideas. You need to spend some of your time there, but not 70 to 80% of it. You know, if we said, okay, I'm going to spend 30%, and it's an amazing difference when you start thinking, whoa, hang on a minute. I don't have to control my thoughts, but I certainly have a choice over where my energies get spent.
So you can certainly influence those.
Absolutely. And sitting here thinking about something that is not going to change for 3 hours, you know, is pointless.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And so a lot of time is wasted, as well as creating a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
And as Maria says, yes, Hans Selye's was believing this kind of protocol many generations ago. It's written a lot about stress. Yeah. And as Nicola says, yes, about the NLP presuppositions, the map is not the territory.
Although most people that I speak to about NLP don't understand what that sentence means. I think it's a bit of an in thing. If you're in the world of NLP, then that sentence makes complete sense. But I think if you've never heard of NLP or not in that field, you read that sentence and go, what are they talking about?
I remember going on an NLP weekend, and I remember listening to that and them explaining it, and I never fully got it.
And then thinking, what? Basically, we all have perceptions of things, and they're not always reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty much what it means.
better say, put that way. So let's put this to you, Zoe. Christine says, could the opposite be true in terms of stress? I.e., we feel guilty because we haven't done things because of fear, and this leads to even more stress.
Yes.
That's an interesting one and very common.
Yes, absolutely. I cover this in most of the corporate workshops that I do, is this idea of, you know, that you're just feeding the beast, you're feeding the monster. The guilt about not doing something just feeds the exact same stress response system as the thing that you're not doing. And we end up in this kind of, you know, feeding the beast situation where you fear stepping out and doing something, but then you add on the fear of now I've let myself down and feel disappointed because I've not been able to do it.
Yeah.
And on we go until, and none of that is changing your autonomic nervous system. None of that is saying that you're safe. None of it is switching that system into something that's more useful or something that's triggering that parasympathetic system. You're literally just staying in that place and then just feeding it again and again and again and again. For me personally, so the biggest thing that I found in terms of stress and IBS when I did it was 18 months before that, I'd quit my job, left my partner, moved out of home, moved back in with mum and dad, got a new job, got a new partner and got a new home, literally within about 6 months. So change was a massive thing for me. And I didn't realise, you know, and 18 months later, I was sat there going, my life's great. I was engaged. I had a great job. Like, to look at my life at that point, it all looked rosy. But the the thing that I've learned is it's the fact that your body then says, oh, we don't need to be in that survival mode anymore. It was when it all ended that I had all the symptoms. It wasn't while I was going through it, because my body had to, get through it. It had to do what it needed to do to cope. But then I left my corporate job in 2011. So again, I quit my corporate job and I set up my own business. I set it up with 750 quid. I just literally went, right, I'm off. So again, I had huge change, but that time I didn't get any IBS symptoms, any stress symptoms, and any anxiety symptoms. So the thing that was different was exactly what Christine was talking about. It's about, how do I prepare myself well to step out and do these things, but not drive myself mentally nuts in the process with all the fear and all the worry and all the pressure and all of that that we kind of, chuck into the mix as we're going along. So that for me is massive, being able to learn to let go of the fear and the guilt and the what ifs of things.
And the trouble with staying within our comfort zone as well means that usually that comfort zone gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're able to do less and less and less, and that really restricts our lives. And yet I've never met anybody yet who's actually managed to get out of their comfort zone successfully to then think it was not worth doing. Because actually it was it is worthwhile to actually experience a bit of fear. And again, it's about breaking it down. And especially if let's say, procrastinating over something, like you've written a book recently, and I've written a book. And how much did we procrastinate initially over actually getting it started? Okay. And all these fears about getting out there. That is fearful about being judged and whatever, and yet it's about breaking it down and doing it step by step, not just suddenly launching yourself out there.
Doing that, I've said already, I'm not very good at stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit. I like throwing myself out of it, guns and all and just see if I can swim. It's not a good. I'm not advising this. That's not a good plan.
Break it down.
And instead, stepping out your comfort zone little by little, and then coming back to your place of safety to resettle the system, recalm the system. I'm trying to get better at it. But like so many people, we're all just doing. It's a lesson for life. It's a toolkit that I will keep using for the rest of my life, because it's not something that I can say, oh, I've cured myself of all of this, because I'm a human and I'm gonna do these things.
What you like to do.
Yeah, I've done it again. Like, whoa, hang on a minute, come back, resettle. So yeah, I think that staying in your comfort zone is as stress and pain driving as moving out of it. But I think we can do it in a much better way. And much more kind to ourselves, and much more compassion and all of that kind of stuff than some of the ways that we do it at the minute.
And sometimes some of the easiest way the most basic things that I would suggest if somebody's wanted to do something that is out of their comfort zone is, first of all, to acknowledge and express their fears around it. So offloading onto paper, freaking out and catastrophizing onto paper. For even 2 to 5 minutes, just allow all the negative fears and worries, anything that's holding you back, acknowledge it, and then to rationalize it, and then make some decisions. Okay, so what could I do to make it easier? What little step could I take? And then not forgetting, reframing things, starting to change the habitual fear related to a certain activity, for example. So maybe reframing that in your mind and starting to use imagination and supportive self-talk well before you consider even doing it. And I use this with skydiving. The second time I was asked to do it, and I just thought, okay, yes, I'm going to do it this time. And picking up spiders, because I had a massive spider phobia, and over the years it had got a little bit easier. But I remember thinking, I'm asking my patients to do so many things that they're really scared about doing. What do I have that I can do to use all the tools I teach? And actually, doing the spider phobia one was the way to go. Now, actually, I think now I did it wrong, because when I saw a spider, actually the first time I picked a spider up, and I acknowledged my fears before that, But the first time I picked it up, I chose a little one when I saw a little one, picked it up, went, ugh! And then I went, that didn't actually help, Georgie, because you've just reassured yourself that that's scary. So then I threw it away. Whereas actually what I should have done is kept it in the bath or something. You know, if there was found a spider in the bath and kept picking it up and then putting it down, soothing myself, etc. But then, so this happened over a period of time because there weren't that many spiders to pick up. But I do remember picking one up, the second one up, and still a little one, but just holding it and literally going, hello, you lovely little thing. I'm keeping my breathing really slow and calm because I'm showing my primal brain, false alarm, no, I'm safe. This little tiny spider is not going to kill me. And I was just reassuring myself that I was okay, and gradually got to bigger and bigger ones. So I'm calming myself.
In learning and giving ourselves permission to learn. And I think, like, some people can see people like myself or you who've been doing this for a number of years and sort of go, oh, but, you know, they make it look so easy, and that's, you know. But I think there's permission to say, whenever you're doing a new technique or a new tool, there's permission to learn. Like, you're not going to get it spot on and do it brilliantly first time.
Absolutely.
You didn't. Like, we have learned by doing it, messing it up, getting it wrong, throwing the spider away, going, oh God, what am I doing? Like, that didn't do it. Going back and doing it again, and that's how you learn. So I think there's an offering there in terms of, you don't have to do all these techniques perfectly right from the start. Like, we all start these things and do it wrong and try and then do it another way, or, you know, change it, and you learn as you go. And I think the other thing there is around support. One of the big things that I've changed, certainly over the last year, is opening my mouth and telling people that I'm scared or that I'm not sure. I was terrible at saying I've got to be strong and independent and I've got to figure it out and work all this out. It took me a long time to actually say, no, actually, what I need to do is open my mouth and say, I'm not sure about this, or, you know, I feel a bit scared about this. Your network of people around you, it takes a lesson or a learning to actually stand in front of somebody and go, actually, I'm not doing so well at this. I'm not sure. I'm scared. I've done that a lot more over the last year, and it's made me feel a hell of a lot more supported, connected. And every time I've done it, the people have just been, including yourself, you know, have just been so supportive and lovely. And I kept it all to myself, believing that I had to be independent and strong for so long.
And I think that's very common. It is. And it's like we don't like to show our vulnerability, and that's why we have so many symptoms. And when we do open up and trust, and then trust is a big thing for many people. But it can be really helpful. And I remember one of our probably one of our most successful peer support groups that we have regularly every week was one where everybody was so showing the vulnerability, you know, the height of all this stuff that's going on. And it was such a supportive, warm webinar, everybody there for each other. And it makes you feel safer to be able to express if you get that sort of compassion back from people.
Yeah.
Anyway, I look at the time. We're needing to finish. First of all, Maria says self-compassion and becoming our own best advocate. Absolutely, self-compassion is a huge thing for us all. So I put the link to the alexithymia blog, so the blog about emotions and chronic pain there. And it's at the bottom of the page is the link to the YouTube video. It's really an audio with some lovely images that you put on, didn't you, Zoe? So we'll bring this to an end now. But thank you all for your questions. We can't do this on our own. So yes, thank you so much. It's been interesting.
Yeah, thanks for all the comments and the questions and for getting involved. It's so much nicer than just sitting here and
chatting. We could do that anyway, couldn't we?
Random chat. So it's been lovely to answer your questions, and thank you to everyone that's taken part and commented.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Okay, and obviously if you do have any particular questions, then by all means email us on admin@sirpa.org and we will get back to you. Okay, all the best everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.